evening and welcome to the Ipswich and Suffolk Tech Network. Most specifically, this evening we have a talk coming to you. I always have to check, this is from a Suffolk developers group. So Ipswich and Suffolk Tech Network is a collection of different meetups and other entities as well. We have a coding school in Ipswich, which I think works with about 800 kids a month altogether. So this has had a huge impact. It's 10 years old, so we have a really technical community, lots of clever people in Suffolk. And within this group, we try and harness the powers of the Creative Computing Club, the Makerspace, the Agile User Group, Industrial Women in Technology. There are about 15 groups altogether. So Suffolk Developers, one of them. I think this group is coming up for about 8 or 9 years old, and all of this time it's talked about technical subjects. It tries to be as approachable and reachable as, we're here to answer any question, no question too stupid, and we try and demystify concepts like SD-WAN. So I'm very lucky that I've been working recently with a company called Immervox, who are based in Basildon, who are telco specialists. In that space at the moment, being a specialist is a really valuable thing. Having lots of intelligence is a valuable element. And they have very nicely brought to us one of their larger partners, Virtual1, who are here to talk this evening about the Demystifying SD-WAN. And we have Andrew Napier and John Walters here, who are going to give this talk this evening. And I'm going to pass over to them. So welcome, and here we go. And they will introduce themselves. Over to you guys.
Take it away, John.
Okay, thank you. Having the cybersecurity conversation all around SD-WAN familiarity. So hopefully enriching your knowledge this evening. So I'm John Walters. I work for Virtual1, and I'm the sales specialist focusing on network security and SD-WAN services. I'll let Andrew introduce himself as well.
Thank you, John. I'm Andrew. I look after cloud and security product management for Virtual1. So everything from shelves in a data center through to infrastructure as a service, through to various backup and cybersecurity applications, through to edge security, cloud security, and SD-WAN as a part of that.
So our agenda this evening, the what's coming up in terms of running order, quite a few discussion points, but we'll keep this kind of quite running order. This evening is looking at the market, what's going on, clarifying our strategy, what we do, why we do things the way that we do, giving you some ideas as to how to leverage this technology, whether you're a single site or a multi-site business or representing such companies. This naturally takes us into managed security, which is Andy's specialist area of expertise during the webinar, and we're going to give you hopefully some ideas as to how to get started and what to do next with Immervox as well. So conversation starters that we regularly get involved with Immervox team is talking about security. So very high profile. What's going on in the world at the moment is causing businesses to really think about how safe are we? Have we locked everything down significantly enough, or are we exposed? Because if we're vulnerable, that's going to be incredibly painful. Application performance is critical. So applications are important to businesses. Businesses spend a lot of money investing in their applications and how they want users to consume them, and also their customers as well, because that impacts the experience and loyalty of customers to their business as well. And not just because of COVID-19, but COVID-19 has helped to transform the mobility in the workplace. So I don't think any business is necessarily fully back in the office, so we now need to accommodate that users are all over the place, working from home, in customers' offices, sometimes in the office, sometimes not. So keeping everything nice and safe and secure. So I'm going to ask Andy to walk us through what kind of interesting, complicated, what's going on in the world and what's going on in the marketplace.
Yes. So why has it all got so complicated? There is if this is just purely from a networking perspective, so from 2008 to maybe 2018, connecting sites and buildings together was a fairly straightforward conversation, in that I've got a bunch of stuff I need connected together, therefore, and my data center will be at the center of it. So therefore I need a private network, and I need some internet access over the top, obviously, because people on my wide area network use internet access. So then SD-WAN came along, I'd say in about 2018, 2019, and started a whole raft of different conversations. And a lot of them have been quite complicated. I think that the subject itself has been overcomplicated by various different vendors all jumping on what they perceive as a bandwagon. So anyone, I think it first big use case is interstate MPLS networks in the US and global MPLS networks, because they are very expensive and they are very cumbersome and it takes ages to get anything done. However, that's not necessarily the case for example, the UK only. So when Cisco come out and say we can save you 50% of your WAN cost by using our, or if you deploy our SD-WAN solution, that's predicated on the US network or the global network all going out and getting their remote sites to buy local internet access, which is very much cheaper than MPLS access. And then you put a Cisco box on the end, and then you can do stuff quickly. You can save loads of money and so forth. So do it cheaper, do it quicker. SD-WAN is better than MPLS. It's kind of got stuck as a sort of understanding. If you've got an MPLS network, you should be thinking about changing it, because so that's one reason why it's got complicated. And various other vendors saw the success of the early messages and have had a look at their own portfolio and thought, well, what have we got that we could legitimately stick an SD-WAN badge on? So you end up with a cluttered marketplace full of broadband bonders, load balancing equipment, application performance enhancement software, bulkhead caching to speed up applications, and all of it ends up with an SD-WAN badge. So, and obviously the messaging from all these people is going to be slightly different as well, because their view on SD-WAN is different, because it has to be different, because it has to reflect the strengths of their own kit. So that's why the subject of SD-WAN is complicated. In terms of network deployment, it's also got more complicated because of changes in technologies and working practices. So, almost every presentation starts off with a note to COVID, and this one's no different in that if you send your entire workforce to work from home, then the nature of your network has changed greatly. I don't think that's disputable. So, and we have seen, especially in our business, we've seen that candidates were for positions that we're looking to recruit for now don't necessarily want to come into central London, as surprising as that may seem. So the change that was forced upon us by the pandemic has permanently changed the way networks have to work. There's also the fact that internet access is now seen as the gateway for everyone's applications, in that conversation back in 2018 or 2008 that said, I need all of my remote sites to be able to connect back to where my applications are, which is my data center. And I'd rather not have to buy firewalls, actually, because that's a pain. I just want all my remote sites coming back to my data center, because that's where my applications are. That's no longer the case, because people have pulled racks and racks and racks of equipment out of data centers and gone for a cloud strategy. So there is not necessarily the no-brainer requirement for a private network to connect everything together, because all of your applications aren't privately accessible, they're publicly accessible. Therefore, internet access is default the thing you need. However, when you're building a network to connect some buildings together, it's fairly straightforward, because from an MPLS perspective, all of your sites, the routing tables are held within your MPLS provider. You add another site, you add it to the routing table, everything's fine. However, if you are building an SD-WAN network where your security appliances are now your routers as well, sort of, get the security policy wrong, or the rules and policy sets wrong on a firewall, it's now no longer affecting one or two sites. It completely breaks the network and anything that you're trying to do over it. So deploying internet-facing networks is a hell of a lot more complicated than deploying private networks. And because of that, those 2 points, good network access and security, are also vital. So we've had a good sit and think about what we think people are actually, what the drivers actually are. So because it's got so complicated, we've seen customers saying, well, they're less and less interested in technology feeds and speeds and feats. They're more interested in just get it to work. So that thing that I have spent loads of money on, i.e. my software application that I bought because it was going to solve various operational challenges and problems that I have. For example, once someone's placed an order, it moves into a different work stream, and then when a customer phones up the customer support team, they can't see that order because it's in the provisioning system that customer services haven't got access to. That sort of problem means a bad customer experience, which means people don't like dealing with me, which means people will just go somewhere else online and place the orders for someone else. So they've bought very expensive software to be able to mitigate those problems and to improve their own customer service. That's where the pound notes are. So if, however, having launched your brand new shiny application that's going to jump you leaps and bounds above your competition, if your users, so the people you employ that need to use that application, if they hate doing it because it's laggy and it's slow, and I don't necessarily mean the user experience in the traditional software sense of the user experience in terms of the navigating through the software. I mean, how responsive is it? What are the page refresh times? I've clicked submit and it sits there and hangs. So these are all problems that are more to do with the connectivity, the network access to that application, rather than user experience of journeying through that piece of software. If they're just to highlight, because I know we've got some development people on. By user experience, I'm not talking about how easy the application is to use inherently. I'm talking about how the network connection to it is performing, and if it's performing badly, that gives a bad user experience. So if people don't like using it because it's slow and laggy, they may well start using other stuff. So there are quite a few occasions where we'll sit down in front of a customer and he will tell us that X, Y, and Z applications are the most important. It turns out that nobody actually uses application Y because everyone started using Dropbox but not really told anyone. So Dropbox is actually a key application, even though the business doesn't think anyone uses it. So again, it's another reason why it's all got complicated. But what do people care about first and foremost? That thing I bought has to be easy to use. Otherwise, I've wasted a load of money. So user experience is the most important thing. Security, more and more so, as John said, is more important. It's always potentially a bit of a fear sell, but even you just got to read a newspaper, and it's full of stories of increasingly smaller and smaller businesses who've been held to ransom or hacked or had a data breach of some sort. It's not just big corporates anymore. It's smaller businesses. So value, and by value, that sort of links into user experience. So value means what can it allow me to do that I need to do, not how many pages of PDF have you got in your brochure. And agility. So agility is super important. People buying this sort of thing may well be entering into a 3 or 5 year contract. What they don't want to be in is in a position where they get asked to do something as a division to enable the business to change. Again, pandemic, sending everybody from home as an example, and the platform or system or network that they've bought doesn't allow them to do that. So hence agility. Moving on, I keep losing my little. So we've put a couple of a slide together on what we think SD-WAN is, and as literally I was given the job to define this. This is my stab at what SD-WAN is. So it's a software-defined WAN architecture. So that doesn't mean that it's MPLS or internet facing. It doesn't care. It's a WAN architecture that uses the available WAN circuits to be able to get to where it needs to get to. That could be a point-to-point. It could be completely private MPLS. It could be wide open internet access. It could be a Wi-Fi point-to-point beacon over a country field. It doesn't care. Therefore, there is no MPLS versus SD-WAN, because SD-WAN will work over MPLS. But the most important thing is that it uses self-learning intelligence and application awareness. So we are, like John kicked off with at the beginning, if you've got an application that's really, really important, that makes and takes money, you want the performance of that application to be prioritized at all times. And that's what SD-WAN is for Virtual1. It's the ability to be able to identify, prioritize, and steer application traffic across the best performing wide area network link. The goal of all of that is to improve end user experience. So that's it in a nutshell from us. We are, in terms of the essentials, when I was building the product, it's not about a box either. We'll get onto what SD-WAN is. I don't believe that SD-WAN should be looked at as a particular vendor necessarily. There's a lot of people who will sell tin on the basis that it doesn't matter what you plug it into because it's really clever. We don't agree with that. There's not all internet access circuits are created equal, and not all ISPs have got the same quality drivers. For example, a highly congested consumer grade network is highly congested because A, there's a lot of people on it, and B, the ISP is trying to beat free broadband offers from the likes of TalkTalk. So the ISP upstream connection to the internet may well actually be very, very small in comparison to the amount of capacity that you could add up all of the FTTC circuits that they currently have on the network. So congestion isn't just a local tail thing, it's also an ISP to internet thing. But internet access, it does come at a cost. You can't do it all through peering. You do need to pay for internet access transit. And if you're paying for people who are just downloading Netflix all night, then you will want to choke that sort of traffic. We don't. We're a business-only network, so we don't do any traffic shaping upstream. So the great network thing means that Virtual1 internet access, and there are other providers that are similar, but business-specific ISPs such as ourselves will be, our internet access will be faster than a consumer-grade network, for example, because there's less congestion on it. Strong technology roadmap is important. The vendor of the equipment that's doing the application awareness piece, it's important that they have a lot of R&D, because with agility being very important to customers, we need to be very carefully choosing a vendor who's taking the future seriously so that we can maintain agility through the term of a contract. And one of the most, well, if not the most important thing about SD-WAN is the security part. So it's not enough to have a box that's good at security, because 6 months of no updates later and that box won't be very good at security. You need something backed by a service provider who's going to take a conscientious approach to making sure that that device is as secure as possible throughout the term of the contract. Hence, robust security practice rather than robust security feature. This is a diagram to illustrate the marketplace in general. It's a confusing place, but we have seen a trend in that there have been vendors that used to be about plug loads of WAN into our box and it will be brilliant, who have started to acquire businesses whose USP was WAN op and application acceleration. So for example, VMware buying VeloCloud, Cisco buying Viptela, and Aruba buying Silverpeak. Silverpeak, Viptela, and VeloCloud were all about application awareness, and Aruba particularly was very much about, we've got a box with 2 holes in it, you can plug some WAN in if you want. So the fact that those acquisitions have been made, I think lends credence to the application experience is the most important thing when it comes to SD-WAN. So John, do you want to pick up on the network? Always, mate.
Yep, absolutely. So you get the idea of the blue and yellow color coding. So the internet is yellow. That's that big circle in the sort of the top of the diagram. So this is the element of all network traffic, anything that is outside of the Virtual1 core network that is public internet. We can use SD-WAN, application-aware traffic steering, to try and enrich the journey as best possible, but we are not responsible for the internet at large. But more and more, as Andy was saying, applications are hosted in the internet, but there are other ways of accessing all of those cloud platforms that are depicted in that that yellow circle in the top right. If you look at the circle below it, the blue circle looks very similar, but what the blue circle is depicting is that it is privately plumbed into the Virtual1 network. So this is a distinction between what we at Virtual1 and Immervox spend a lot of time talking to customers about, is the difference in the journey between public-facing services and private-facing circuits. So on the left-hand side, and Andy, there's another animation if you want to just bring this up. We've got a cloud at the top, if you like, of the last mile provision. So these are the access circuits that Immervox procure through Virtual1. Different flavors of Ethernet from 100 meg, gigabit, 10 gig, probably faster in the future. Broadband that we were talking about earlier, because that still has a place until finally the copper technology gets ripped out, and we've got to take customers on that journey. Cellular, and everybody attentively looking at where 5G will really be a prolific advantage for businesses and what the timescales are to adopt that technology. So we partner with a number of underlying last mile tail providers. It's how we put the physical and wireless connectivity into customer premises. We've got a FortiGate shown on the left hand side. So this is the Security Appliance that Andy's just been referring to, that also has SD-WAN under the bonnet as well. So these FortiGate devices are kind of built on steroids, really, in terms of their processing capability. So that's why we get very excited around what FortiGate technology can do. That has the security icon on it. Now, the FortiGate appliance could be a security platform for an internet-facing, i.e. yellow circuit, because anything that is yellow, public internet, needs to be secured. We know how dangerous it is not to have decent firewall security. But if the Fortinet was being deployed in a private network environment, so everything was blue traffic, and in the bottom, in the middle, we've got Virtual1 icon with private network. So this, for example, could be a customer like yourselves, maybe with 20 or 200 or 2,000 sites, or just 2 sites, it doesn't matter. What we're doing is we're using the Virtual1 network to pin those 2 sites together. They don't leave the Virtual1 core. And as Andy said, we're not a consumer sort of traffic host, so we don't have hundreds of thousands of users and gamers abusing the Virtual1 network. This is a wholesale purpose-built, carrier-grade core network. Now, in the heart of the network, we also have something called software-defined networking. So a bit of a flagship status for Virtual1 is we were the first carrier actually in the UK to facilitate software-defined networking variable bandwidth. So an Immervox will be able to explain circuits that are compatible for this technology, but we have enabled the ability for our resellers to be able to turn bandwidth up in real time, either physically through our portal or through API technology. So we've got a creative core network that connects to the internet and multiple peering and, one hop away from, Google and Microsoft and everything you'd expect us to be doing. But you'll see a vast proportion of the traffic is blue. And that's because we track politely all of the SIP and UC providers and cloud providers. And our partners are facilitating in terms of services. And we want to keep that private as possible within the Virtual1 environment. So in our world, this is a VLAN. It's either a yellow circuit or a blue circuit, or it's a yellow and a blue circuit. And then overlay on top of that is clever technology that can recognize paths to public and private environments and what's busy and what isn't busy, and what is important from an application perspective, and which users we want to prioritize as well. So you'll also see in the center of the network, there's a fluffy cloud diagram. So we are a cloud provider in our own right. We have an industry-leading infrastructure as a service platform across multiple UK data centers for UK sovereignty in terms of where data is held. And it's possible to fire up any application under the bonnet of Virtual1 and keep it contained privately within our core network. Now, when we spin up a firewall in the core network, typically they're virtual firewalls these days. So these are software instances. You've got the choice of either physical or virtual firewalls. One of the advantages of keeping the firewall as close to the internet feed into our network is what we call clean pipes. So dirty internet full of viruses and all sorts of things trying to attack you as a business, because that's what happens. That centralized security platform will act as the gatekeeper for what's allowed and what isn't allowed, what's good traffic, bad traffic, what meets your policy and what doesn't. And then the traffic that then flows through the Virtual1 network to your endpoint, router or FortiGate, whatever's on the end of the circuit, is then nice clean bandwidth. So that 100 meg, gigabit, 10 gig that you've invested in is what we would call clean pipes. Most businesses tend to be traditional and have an on-premise firewall, but there's certainly a growing trend as applications have moved to the cloud. So security is moving to the cloud, and SASE is quite an interesting discussion point, which we won't get started on today, but we can put a separate session together around that. So the advantage of being connected to the Virtual1 network is the pedigree of our network and how we accommodate traffic and manage that network environment. The automation in the software-defined networking, there's about 30 features that Immervox can help you just control within seconds. So why wouldn't we try and making changes very simple? Because we stick to what we do best, which is networking and security and cloud. And then the ability to determine whether you want to keep traffic public or private. And it is not uncommon in an SD-WAN environment for a customer to buy a Microsoft Express route, maybe 500 meg, and run that over a gigabit circuit. So that would be your blue traffic, but also have internet locally from site, because we've got a FortiGate firewall on premise. And if we needed to exceed the 500 meg into express route, maybe that customer might take a rule to allow overflow traffic to go the yellow route over the internet, but with priority, because that's really important traffic compared to checking Netflix or sending emails, perhaps. So hopefully that topology sort of sets the scene for we probably do a lot more than just networking and boxes into sites and facilitating circuits. So at the end of the presentation, the call to action is really understanding how you use bandwidth, how customers use bandwidth, and what's important. And as I said, a growing trend for more cloud-based services and more private networking. So we will talk later on that MPLS is not dead. It's not a case of rip out MPLS networks and go the internet route and that will fix everything. So I'll let Andy talk about that.
Thank you, John. So yes, it's just because you use internet-based stuff, it doesn't necessarily mean you need the internet to be able to get there. People such as ourselves can connect you to your public cloud environments using private connectivity and all of the lower latency and better end user experience characteristics that comes with. So application performance technologies, just to touch on this. So we're seeing a lot of, and this is where the value bit comes in. So I was at a meeting 6 months ago, and there was a representative from Vodafone in there, and he was talking about the fact that when you run out of bandwidth, part of Vodafone's proactive service management will be an email from their automated platform that tells you that you need to upgrade bandwidth, which is great, but it's effectively asking people to pay more money. It's basically saying your stuff's about to stop working as well as you think it should, pay us more money and we'll give you some more bandwidth. So there's not a lot of value for the customer in that little scenario. A really value-rich conversation would be the service provider saying in your quarterly service review, looking at this graph at the near bottom left of the screen, I can see that there's various different applications that are currently using your bandwidth, right? And I can see that you're telling me that your phones don't work, for example, between I think that's 2 o'clock in the afternoon or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and that's causing you a problem. I can see it's causing a problem because we've given you a 2 meg circuit and you've completely redlined that circuit between those times. However, I can tell you that for some reason, somebody's configured Google Drive to be doing all of its replication between the hours of 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock. So it's Google Drive replication and Dropbox that are flattening all of your bandwidth and meaning that you can't use a phone between those times. So rather than send you an email saying buy more bandwidth, keep your stuff working, I'm going to suggest that we or you either rate limit Google Drive and Dropbox during the day, or you, your customer, go to Google Drive and Dropbox and amend the configurations for when backups are taken, and that will result in a full circuit becoming a third full, which will mean that quality of application experience is restored. Now, the second conversation, where we're talking about the application, I would suggest is a lot more value rich than a text saying buy more bandwidth. So this is really the value for customers and the right suppliers in terms of delivering value. I thought I'd talk about what, in terms of demystifying, I thought I'd spend a little bit of time talking about what we believe SD-WAN isn't. We've spoken about what it is. We don't believe it's always internet. Don't believe it's direct replacement for MPLS. We have, I think MPLS as an acronym is dead because lots of people believe that it's dead. But I don't believe that connecting one thing to another thing privately and without using the public internet, and therefore no need for a firewall, and therefore low latency and low packet loss and high customer experience, I don't think that's dead. It's just that people think that those four letters are dead. Certainly not always simple to deploy. It's certainly not cheaper necessarily than a private brackets MPLS network. I'll get onto the use cases in a second, but we've had a number of customers who've begun the SD-WAN journey, got to the pricing stage and thought, no, hang on, I've got 500 sites. I can't buy 500 boxes. That's just nuts. Isn't there a cheaper way of connecting all my things together? I thought, yes, there is. It's called MPLS, private networking. So what we think true SD-WAN is about. So number one, application aware technology. Number two, it takes us back to that previous screen, which is central orchestration and visibility. So being able to understand what's going on your network, spot trends, plan for development and so forth, make one setting to one thing once and then push the push button, so that those configuration changes go out to every single device on the network. That's definitely part and parcel of SD-WAN. Better user experience does, if it's internet facing, need underpinning by managed security. Will, as John said right at the top of the call, only as good as the network path available to it. If you plug 5 heavily congested consumer grade broadband circuits into a box and expect it to magically cure all problems, then you might be slightly disappointed. It does require an understanding of a customer application. The whole point about having application aware technology is that you tell it what your important applications are and then it prioritizes them. We have seen a few SD-WAN deployments from our, well, we've taken them over basically, that have fallen foul of just a complete lack of understanding as to what the customer actually wants in terms of application prioritization. If you don't understand what's in use, you don't understand what's important, how on earth are you supposed to configure a box to then prioritize it? So, and does require ongoing tuning as well. So it's not set and forget. So using central orchestration and visibility tools, you can then make sure that the overall landscape is nicely tuned. So if a new application is released or a version upgrade, or the characteristics of the data usage of a particular application change, then you need to be able to tweak any thresholds or choking or dedicated bandwidths that you've put in place for that application. And first and foremost, the ongoing tuning also applies to making sure the boxes that comprise the network, so the firewalls themselves, are always running a recent version of firmware that somebody has had a good look at and certified fit for use. I've kind of touched on this one already, so I'm just going to, I won't take much more of it, but this goes back to the why is it now so complicated slide. Yes, MPLS is easy to do, but security and SD-WAN isn't necessarily. I'll go tuning. So this is about our, I mean, it is specific to Virtual1, but it's echoed throughout industry, and that there are 3 bits of important security silo. Edge refers to the bulkhead between a network and the internet. So in a MPLS or private network, that would be the internet access breakout. In a DIA circuit, the edge will be basically your front door, where the firewall is. So edge is normally a physical appliance, but can be virtual, especially if the edge is in our network, for example. Cloud. So just because you've put stuff in there doesn't necessarily mean that the place that you've put it is inherently secure. So virtualizing firewalls and putting them in front of customer cloud instances is a thing. Securing the data that's held in there, so regularly scanning the information that you have in the cloud and making sure that no one's embedded anything in there that they shouldn't have done. So that's that second pillar, if you will. And most importantly, as an emerging thing, going back to the why is it all so complicated, if everyone is everywhere expecting to be able to access everything, then there is no edge to that network anymore. It's the edge is the endpoint. So what devices are people accessing your stuff from? And how do I enforce any kind of compliance or access onto that device, especially when I don't own it? So the whole BYOD thing. So edge, bulkhead, cloud, self-evident, endpoint, that thing in your hand or on the table, whatever. Why is security important? This is some interesting. It's a bit of a fair slide, but there are some really interesting numbers in it. In that, one of the most interesting ones, the dealing with COVID-19 one, and this has come from National Cyber Security Centre rather than being any particular vendor's view of the world. So half of businesses have staff using personal devices for work, and less than 20% cover use of personal devices work in a cybersecurity policy. So you've got half of people spoken to, yes, personal devices are used for work, and less than half of them have any kind of cybersecurity policy for them. That's one of the most interesting numbers that I can see on the slide. And the other number is the 8.5 grand, and the other one was the 20th quarter. They're being tacked at least once a week. So just because it's happened once doesn't mean few, right? That's me, that's my once every 5 year storm gone. If you have been successfully breached, the chances are you will appear on a list of people who are easy to breach, and that list will be sold and you will probably be attacked again. So yes, those are my most interesting numbers, apart from all the others that are also scary. But in terms of massive holes, that personal devices for work one, I think, is one of the most gaping, if I can use such a word. So this is how our managed security service hangs together. So this is just how we've decided to build things, and it's replicatable yourselves or from us, or obviously from Immervox. We have physical or virtual devices, and then we have the Virtual1 cloud, and then we have managed service customers. So this is the edge appliance, which is physical to virtual, talks to the stuff that it's in our network. Key ones being FortiAnalyzer and FortiManager. So FortiManager allows us to be able to make global changes to anything connected to it. And FortiAnalyzer allows us to be able to provide the statistics that you can then spot trends and analysis and so forth based on you as a managed service customer are then viewing this visibility change and reporting, which is coming out of FortiPortal, which is talking to FortiManager and talking to FortiAnalyzer. One of the key requirements when we were looking for a vendor was this: there needs to be a group of people who are paid by the vendor sitting in a big room trying to hack themselves and also looking out for 0-day type stuff. Again, a box is only as secure as its last update, and if you have a group of techs sandboxing suspicious looking things and then sending out a signature once they've decided whether it's harmful or unharmful, sending those signatures out to every single FortiGate that's currently got an active subscription on it, then you've got 0-day protection in there as well. So that's kind of how it all hangs together. John, if you'd like to take over on the FortiPortal bit, which is the next one we're coming to.
Yeah, so the last point that Andy had there on the previous slide was the ability to not only have change requests performed by Immervox and Virtual1, but also a level of co-management. Being a wholesale-only provider, we work with a number of partners and multiple end users, and everybody's view of how they would like to procure SD-WAN with managed security falls into a couple of camps, and that is either I don't want to touch this myself at all, I want you guys to look after it, but I'd like to be able to have visibility and reporting to be directed to the important things that will crop up as conversations in service meetings. And then we have customers who would like as much possible control because previously perhaps you and other customers are quite adept at configuring and building firewalls, but is that really scalable? And as Andy said, if you're a 500 site organization, do you want to be logging into every single appliance separately? So FortiPortal is born about as it comes as standard with every Immervox Virtual1 security appliance. So whether it's an entry-level baby FortiGate or something substantially higher spec and highly resilient, this is included as standard. So every customer gets exactly the same experience. And what we're looking at here is my devices, where are they? Are they happy? Are they green? Or are they amber? Amber doesn't mean the device is about to fall over necessarily. What it's usually doing is giving you an early warning system that traffic is being steered over an alternative circuit. So you might want to that. Perhaps we've moved traffic from a gigabit fiber circuit to broadband, and maybe that's a good thing or not, depending how you've set up your SD-WAN configuration. We're looking for policy hits. So this is a good thing. The firewall is stopping people from trying to get to places that you don't want them to get to, or at certain times of the day. We're looking at the characteristics of the underlying circuit. So are these performing well? When we are measuring your service levels, the parameters that you set for how applications behave, we're typically talking about packet loss, latency, and jitter. So if for some unforeseen reason a circuit starts misbehaving, but we have a perfectly happy performing circuit that doesn't normally carry traffic, it's normally there maybe as failover in dormant mode, well, we can now in real time, less than a millisecond, steer traffic to that perfectly fine circuit. But we've probably got some rules around it that actually tell us how much bandwidth we've got and what we want to facilitate. So this is sharing as well. I think the next couple of screens are around showing you the types of reporting. So lots of analytical content. So here's the map of where your devices are and latency and jitter, and who's on the network and who's using it. We then move into your threats. So just 2 screenshots here. There are many more. These pimples probably don't look that exciting. The application ones look far more interesting or far more color-coded. And your spot on the bottom right-hand corner, we've got that topology again. Now, what this is actually showing you, and I appreciate these are probably confusing the first time around that you've seen them, but this is the FortiGate, if you like, is that bright pink bit on the left-hand side. That's the appliance. That is pushing traffic with rule sets applied to it through the purple area, if you like. And it's then targeting WAN ports or circuits. It's trying to get to the outside world, whether that's the public or the private network. And what it is doing, it is steering traffic against the rules that you've prescribed as the customer. So it's very much a case of start doing this, stop doing that. when certain scenarios arise, such as the latency has increased or packet loss is more than 1%, and we can't tolerate that. So very meaningful statistics. So even on a firewall, on a broadband circuit, the customer gets this experience right through to the multinational, multi-site, highly international network. This visibility is immediate. So everything that's in that FortiManager, FortiAnalyzer, captive environment, talking to every appliance, physical or virtual, all of this gets shared. It's worth us stating probably, Andy, as well, that we do have customers who probably want to get their hands on the FortiManager type engineering interface experience. So, where it warrants having its own FortiManager, FortiAnalyzer orchestration platform specifically for an end user. Yeah. That's also possible as well.
It is. It's interesting actually, because the technical contacts within the customer normally push for 40. Because there's two things with the managed service. There's making changes, and then there's doing potentially harmful and damaging things like upgrading to an unstable version of firmware. Now, every IT department will like the ability to be able to make changes swiftly, and therefore push for FortiManager. However, once they kind of become aware that actually using the FortiManager appliance means that they're going to have to do the firmware updates and certification, generally we see a roll back towards FortiPortal. And I tell you what, if I can do changes on the portal and then you do the potentially career-ending stuff using your FortiManager, then that's it. It normally so we normally end up doing the customer appetite for change is fulfilled through the portal, and we do the potentially damaging stuff through FortiManager. But it is an open option. Reporting is quite key. This is, I mean, even for once a year when someone in accounts phones you up and says, "What's this invoice for?" The fact that you can then reply with a sheaf of reports that go back once a month over the last 12 months is handy to have. So reporting is key. So all of the reports down the left hand side of that are baked in, if you will. There are around 58 in total that can go into the per user type stuff. So when it comes to web usage report, for example, they take a little bit more configuration because we need things like a list of users and so forth. We can also, if you are running, for example, a proprietary or bespoke application, we can give that signature to the system and then report on your application. So reports can be absolutely customized down to individual, previously unknown to anyone applications.
It's an important point as well, Andy, because Fortinet recognise about 5,000 applications. Yeah. So we challenge you as customers to find an application that we in Fortinet don't recognise, so that we can get it added. But that's the level of strategic relationship that we have with our vendors, because again, it's important that these solutions reflect exactly what's mission critical to you as customers, and something that Fortinet in particular are very good at and lead the market in. They've been doing this for many years, so they've built up that wealth of just application awareness within the solution.
As in automatic detection thereof, which is incredibly useful from a configuration perspective. There are other vendors that we have looked at who will tell you that one of their unique selling points of their particular SD-WAN solution is the fact that you can prioritize applications, which sounds amazing. And it gives you the tools to be able to add applications in, so you build your own custom prioritization, which also sounds good. However, that means that actually per site there is an enormous amount of configuration to do, because you need to tell especially if you're doing performance thresholding, not all of your sites are going to be connected using the similar grade of connectivity. So you might have some sites on full fiber Ethernet, some sites on broadband. So not only have you got to tell each box what, even if you can push it out, essentially, you've still, even using a central platform, have to push out and keep adding, because more and more applications obviously come to light as the system gets in place. Keep adding those applications because it doesn't auto detect, so you need to tell it. And then what a performance threshold breach for an Ethernet circuit is going to look very different to a performance threshold breach for a broadband circuit. So what sounds like very useful things, in this case, it actually meant weeks and weeks of administration headache with either you set the performance threshold low, and that's great because Ethernet sites will only ping when there's a genuine problem, but that means unless you create a completely different set of performance thresholds and applications for a broadband site, you've got a broadband site that's consistently pinging, even though the broadband itself isn't capable of running anywhere near as quickly as an Ethernet circuit. So it's the auto detection of applications was absolutely crucial when we were choosing vendors for that reason. John, do you want to, so we head to tails for this one, or?
Yeah, no, quite happily. So, and again, this is a key USP. So everything that Andy and I have been talking about is hopefully exciting you that this technology simplifies operations. It enables businesses to be more efficient. It enables you to intelligently invest in bandwidth and understand who's using it and how to consume bandwidth and how to plan for resilience, disaster recovery, business continuity going forward. It also challenges you to think about site relationships when you have got multiple sites and how your users connect and how they are secured. Do they need to connect into the traditional office to pick up firewall rules, or shall we just take them straight to the internet, to the things that we trust them to do? So what's really important to us, and the reason that this professional service content is being shared with you, is that we have scoped out a particular format to how we, first of all, agree that taking you on the SD-WAN managed security journey is what we want to do together with Immervox. And we need to obtain a lot of data from you. We almost need to sit next to you while you're logging into your existing security platform and understanding what all of your rules and policies are and what you want to keep and ditch and what you want to write as new. Whilst we're also opening your eyes to the art of the possible with public-private networking and how you might want to evolve. And if you remember earlier on in the presentation, Andy was talking about tuning, and there was a picture of a grand piano, because anybody can sell you a grand piano, but if we don't tune it and we don't get it working efficiently, it'll have a limited, efficiency span. So this professional service wrapper from us from Immervox is about working with you, sitting with you and whiteboarding and understanding exactly as a deep dive how we want to create this environment, single site or multiple site. Our security engineers will then have a documented version of exactly what we're implementing. These are the templates that we build. So again, zero touch deployment is what we strive to get as close as possible to in this industry with automation. So if we have a template configured for you and you want to add another 10 devices into the network, in existing or new sites, it should just be a simple case of get the equipment shipped out and it calls home and it just pulls down the template that we've agreed in that landscaping professional services session. So building it is making sure that we're all on the same page together. But what's really important is, rather than us walking away and thinking Virtual1 and Immervox have done a great job, well done, you've now got Fortinet-based managed security SD-WAN. We do, about 30 days after the service has been running, do what we call a tune-up workshop session. And that is us logging in with you to FortiPortal, looking at all of the analytics, because there's a wealth of data there, and fine-tuning with you whether your security policies are robust enough, whether you need to make changes, whether people really should be on Netflix 50% of your bandwidth during the working day, whether that's key to your business or not.
And whether there's any implications that you weren't aware of, which is really, like I say, Dropbox is a silly example, but if people are using web.whatsapp.com as a instead of Teams, because Teams is rubbish, for example, then that will not be reflected in the application prioritization maps that we've done with you, because we didn't know about it.
Yeah, and this coming back to the art of the possible. A FortiGate security appliance can talk to another FortiGate security appliance over the public internet, whether it's Virtual1 Immervox circuits, or there's a bit of bring your own, connectivity to the party, because maybe you're locked into a contract for the next 3.5 years that you can't break. But we can still respect that environment that you have as the customer, and still put managed security SD-WAN technology into play. Those two devices then will be chatting over the public internet, because that third-party circuit's got nothing to do with the Virtual1 network. So not only can we create that tunneling, that encryption to keep everything safe and secure, but because we have common SD-WAN technology in both boxes at both sites, we can also determine the application steering between the two sites as well. So it very much depends on whether you're a single site, let's just go to the internet and try and prioritize everything and keep us safe, to a multi-site customer who wants to use the internet for everything, all our connectivity, or a mix of hybrid third-party circuits, or you like the idea of private networking, the thing that used to be called MPLS, or maybe we've got some MPLS networks, private networks, but we've got local internet split out as well. So I think in summary, you get the idea that our network is highly capable. We are a business-focused organization. So what our SD-WAN does is it overlays over public and private circuitry environments with the managed service wrapper, to make sure that let's turn on application awareness either at the outset or grow into it. Not every customer necessarily switches SD-WAN on straight away, but facilitates the managed security. The SD-WAN is in the box with the FortiGate. It's not a case of licensing it anymore. It's just there, ready to work, subject to professional services. We've got the core topology with those public-private network paths, and we're regularly adding new environments into our network. So ticking a lot of boxes. Andy, I don't know whether you want to sort of summarize further.
The most so prior to this is more about helping people spot an SD-WAN opportunity in one of our reseller customers. But the most important thing, who and what is on the network, where are your applications, and what applications must work well in terms of the very beginning of anybody looking at it. It's not whether this technology is cheaper than something else or whatever. It's understanding your own application landscape that's the most important first step when it comes to adopting a technology which should allow you to be able to prioritize some of them. There's a very quick example of single site and multi-site examples. We did a piece of press recently about there's no such thing as a single site anymore. So a lot of people tend to think, well, SD-WAN means a wide area network, means lots of buildings. I haven't got lots of buildings, so SD-WAN is not relevant to me. Whereas it's not strictly true in that there's, you don't have your email server on site anymore. You do currently have your perhaps your own PBX on site. You are a multi-site business, even if you've only got one site, because all your applications are not in your building. So therefore, if you want to speed up internet, you want to speed up performance of those applications, then you are looking at SD-WAN, even though you're only a single site. And then we've got obviously the multiple site coming in there as well. We're just going to finish off with a couple of use cases for projects that we've myself and John have worked on. Just to sort of broaden out, really, it's very much security and next generation firewall and SD-WAN when it comes to the breadth of what we do. So we had an educational customer, so 3,000 pupil secondary school. Google Classroom is used exclusively or extensively rather. Literally everything is done on Google Classroom. Lessons are planned by teachers overnight and then uploaded onto the onto Google Classroom, and then they teach those lessons the next day. Very much, if you're standing in a classroom for 30 kids and you can't use Google Classroom, then you can't teach. It's that simple. So clearly there's a need to optimize that particular application. They had moved to a VoIP system by which they went completely hosted. So groups of teachers that have particularly sensitive conversations with parents, so the pastoral team, for example, need very high quality voice. If you're being delivered a distressing message about your child's performance at school, and you're trying to have a collaborative conversation about how to work forward from that, a crackly phone line is not going to help the general emotional state of that conversation. Internet access controls, obviously. But what was really interesting, that surprised me actually when talking to them, that I was thinking, okay, you have X number of staff, therefore you've got X number of staff things, and then you've got pupil or student things. So we've got a quite clear delineation between either you own the hardware, then you've got a particular set of security policies, and if you don't own the hardware, you've got a different set of security policies, which is the way it might work in a corporate enterprise. However, all of the staff laptops are funded through salary sacrifice. So every single staff laptop is effectively a bring your own device. So you do have core edge and then BYOD and then student BYOD. So it's quite a complicated methodology when it comes to working out user groups and profiles. And you do need different security policies for each of those profiles. So the solution, mix of network and mix of firewall, next generation firewall stuff. So going back to the blue and yellow diagram, we had their voice provider already on net for us, by which I mean we already had an interconnect between our network and their hosted telephony system. So the circuit that we put into the site was partitioned via the use of two separate VLANs, one of which carried not just voice traffic, but the UC experience on a secondary VLAN, and the other VLAN delivered internet access that was then split out. So you've got voice completely segregated, voice and UC completely segregated from internet access, and then inside the internet access VLAN, you've got Google Classroom as a prioritized application amongst a couple of others, and then using the UTP and user profiling on the FortiGate appliance itself, and it did have to be on site because it then feeds the Wi-Fi network. So it needs to be, you need to be authenticating onto it while it's on site. Then the various profiles were set up to then distribute access rights into whatever class of device was connecting to that network. And then we've got I picked this one because it's quite interesting, and I've clicked the wrong presentation. So I picked this one because it's an example of a customer who was hell-bent on SD-WAN and was very much, we have MPLS, it's clunky and slow and it's expensive, and we want to go SD-WAN. So they'd begun down that route, and they were the one that I was referring to earlier on, who then said, we've got 200 stores. Does that mean we need 200 routers, 200 firewalls? That seems like a very large equipment bill for essentially enabling sort of what we've already got. Is there not another way of doing this? So the high cost of store access was prohibitive. So therefore, the challenge was the opposite, that they wanted low cost of access to equipment per store. Data center used to be the hub, but there is no data center anymore because it's all been virtualized, which had its own cost saving attached. But it does mean that regional hubs where they are very reliant, or their customer experience is very reliant on their fast access to the ERP and CRM system, to be able to, customer A phones and then the phone displays customer A is calling, so you can pick up and say, "Hi, Jeff," for example, which is a nice touch. And then you can tell Jeff exactly what's going on with his order because you've got access to the ERP system as well. This was all really important, but that was all internet facing. So they would rather have internet access going direct from sites to internet rather than sites to MPLS to internet. But we can argue about the number of hops involved on another call. They obviously needed internet access controls for all site with minimum equipment and key management overhead. So they were a bit stuck in that they wanted the benefits of direct cloud access, via meaning internet access, but also the low cost of access and equipment per store. So a hybridized approach was eventually decided upon, in that, and this is we're seeing quite a few people come around to this way of thinking, in that it's not an either or, is it? They both have, not that we're necessarily comparing the two, but because SD-WAN can run over MPLS as well as it can run over internet, then I can keep MPLS where I don't want firewalls or don't want to have to pay for firewalls, but where I want to augment a regional hub site with with an additional gigabits worth of internet access, I can do so, but I don't need to transition the entire network from private to public. I can just add additional public circuits in where I need them. So the stores remain on MPLS, so and could retain, and it was MPLS broadband, so they literally just need a router. They aren't internet facing, so they don't need a firewall. The internet access they are getting is via a centralized appliance, which was downsized from what they used to have. Now it's running less sites, not running the security for the hub stores anymore. We deployed application aware FortiGates round to the regional devices, which then understand the CRM and ERP applications in use, and can steer then, because we've built them a private network, a private connection to that CRM, publicly cloud-based CRM system, and also a public route to the public platform. So the FortiGate is aware that it's got two routes to be able to get to the same thing, and can therefore monitor the performance of both of those and steer traffic across where appropriate. And obviously the Virtual1 managed security service on top. They initially they wanted the full-blown, we want all the tools, but then actually if we had all the tools, we need all the people, don't we? And that means we need to potentially hire some more security experts, which we don't want to do. So we then took over the deployment and upgrading of firmware on a quarterly basis, as well as giving them access to their estate through FortiPortal. So hopefully those two have brought it to life a little bit more in terms of where it's applicable. And John, I'll let you close us out and move us into questions. Sorry.
Yeah, so we'll pick up questions in a moment, hopefully. But suffice to say that we strive to make this technology as simple as possible for you to be able to understand, ask questions, work with us consultatively. I think from the two examples that Andrew's given, this isn't a case of an email. What could you price SD-WAN? What does it look like? These are detailed conversations. It is taking the time to work through a structure of what do you do as a customer. How do you work now? How are you going to work in the future? What's important to you? Really, pricing is the last part of the jigsaw puzzle, really. So once we've worked together to strategize what a connectivity, networking solution might look like, and what changes you might need to, embark upon as customers or with customers, So this uses our wealth of experience. So we have sales specialists like myself from the security SD WAN side of things. We have a team of sales specialists in our cloud environment as well. So we often work collaboratively. Pre-sales consultants who are also accredited, Fortinet, NSE levels as well. So they don't just talk about Fortinet. They're fully trained on the ins and outs of various features. And then product expertise is not just Andy and his good team, but it's also the resource that we leverage from Fortinet as well. So it is quite common for Immervox Virtual1, yourself as the customer or prospective customer, and Fortinet and any other vendor expertise that we need to bring into the discussions, because a lot of what we do is demonstrating what the technology is capable of. And FortiPortal, that we've shown you a couple of screenshots of, is a whole half an hour probably demo that we typically will do online, and we'll navigate through it. But if we are leveraging Fortinet's expertise, we with Immervox will fully appraise them of who you are as the customer, what's important to you, so that we train them to focus on a really meaningful demonstration. Anybody can do an SD-WAN demo, and there's lots of online videos, but they're not really fine-tuned for you as the customer. They just show you a lot of kind of pretty pictures. Look here, this reporting pack could be yours. We're more interested in how meaningful that is and how you're going to consume it as a business. And most importantly, that fine-tuning of we're here for a 3 to 5 year or longer relationship with each other. So us understanding what needs to work in your environment, what changes you're making, what you're thinking of doing in the future, just means that we're fully aligned. And service meetings with Immervox are then joyful occasions, because we've got a lot of data to be reviewing and a lot of discussions to have. So a bit of homework for you is to probably go and have a look at the connectivity that you have at the moment, your security appliances, what you're using when they're up for renewal, how you're currently managing them, when they were last updated. Have you carried out a recent cyber threat assessment? If not, stick that on the to-do list, and come and engage with us, because we're here to help collaboratively in any way that we can.
I wasn't ready. Thank you. Sorry, I was I was that was fantastic. So guys, can I pass over to you all to unmicrophone and ask questions if you have any?
Yeah, so the key piece of feedback for Andy and I and the wider Virtual1 team, along with Immervox, is, has everything we've run through this evening made sense? So are you comfortable that if you had to explain back into your wider businesses what this SD-WAN thing is and how you might utilize it, what advantages it could bring, have we ticked that box? We have plenty of use case examples and lots of diagrams. So Immervox have that collateral, from Virtual1's SD-WAN library. So there's a lot of follow-up content that we can share together.
David, unmic and ask your question.
Okay, so at the start, you mentioned the benefits being security, the application performance, and agility.
These were more what customers felt was important generally, rather than them, like I say, being less technology focused and more kind of like, right, what are you really interested? What's important to you generally? And that's where we got the agility, and experience. That was irrespective of technology. What's important to you right now, Mr. Customer? Sorry, just to put that into some context.
Okay.
That also comes as well from a number of clients that we work with, disparate network partners and security partners. So there is a real driver for customers looking to have visibility just in a centralized platform. So if I can create that environment, which might mean that I bring some of my own connectivity to the party, because I might not be able to procure circuits from Virtual1 and Immervox, for logistical purposes or contractual purposes. So that's very that centralization comes from, but the agility comes from having a platform that we're now going to centrally invest in that can grow with us as a business. So how easy is it for those nice guys at Virtual1 to recognize I want to plug in another circuit, or I want to move some sites around, or I want to invest in new applications? I've got a new user group. I've got tenants in the building now. We've seen this a lot through COVID. In fact, actually, in the two very technical looking diagrams we had, you might have spotted that one of the user groups was actually a group of tenants going directly to the internet rather than through the internal security policy on the FortiGate, because some tenants either want to use your security or they bring their own security appliance into the location.
But you didn't finish the question, though, did you?
No. So
No, you finished the question.
So my background is security. So I was looking at the security because I'm kind of new to SD1, and I've been kind of Googling while you've been talking, and I can see the benefits. But from a security point of view, I mean, it's kind of new since, like, say, 2018. It looks like the ethical hacker and the actual hacker community is playing catch up. And they're getting wise to SD1 and they're taking a look at it. And I can see that it has all of the security problems that the old school solutions have. So there's tons of CVEs. There's constant attacks now against the management interfaces. They're prone to directory traversal, injection attacks, RCEs, etc. There's loads of attacks now against the authentication bypass, key attacks, DDoS, traffic manipulation and push-in, plus attacks against analytics data and log attacks. So because you're moving the infrastructure from the old data centers and so on onto the internet, you're kind of moving a company's internal network out there into the cloud, and that's more exposure.
You're right. Yeah, but that's more by dint of a customer's migration from a data center behind a locked door private network than so they've already decided to stick their stuff in the internet because of cost savings with virtualizing platforms and so forth. SD-WAN is an attempt to secure that environment rather than being inherently more or less risky than I mean, obviously sticking your stuff out on the internet and then developing a network that can access the internet from everywhere will be less secure than having everything in an MPLS scenario where there's only one point of egress and ingress from internet to your data center and therefore your entire private network. So you're absolutely right. It's why some people are staying with completely private networks.
Isn't hardware on a private network inherently more secure than something where it's completely software defined, as SD-WAN is? So there's a huge difference between those two as well.
Yes, there is. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is why I mentioned the consultative approach. So
yeah.
Immervox and ourselves, we see regular requests from customers saying, I've got internet pipes, what would it be to do SD-WAN instead?
Yeah.
I've got an MPLS network, what would it be to have an SD-WAN network as an alternative? And what customers usually mean by that is, I've got a private network, which I'm paying X for.
Yeah.
As Andy said at the outset, there's a cost-saving initiative here. And maybe if we went SD-WAN, then this is better value for money or lower cost. And what we want to peel away the layers is to understand what is the business doing? Where are sites? What are the relationships between sites? Where is stuff? Where is applications? Where is data stored? If a customer has an objective to host in the cloud, well, what's the impact if that cloud content became vulnerable or infected? So even when we are talking...
Yeah, it's the old story that people think that the cloud is this amazing answer, but it's not necessarily an amazing answer because it may save you some money. But yes, there are ramifications of saving you money. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not uncommon for... and again, Andy and I get involved in a lot of hybrid network solution discussions. So what if the traffic that came into our network through Cloud Exchange was carrying some unbeknown malware? Do we want to pick it up and block it? Do we want to have centralized security platform policing everything, even from Cloud Exchange, which is a trusted private network relationship, but we're not in control of the content that is being facilitated through those private ports, as it were? Or do we want to push it as dirty traffic, but private dirty traffic, down to the firewall on site, which is either provided by us or the customer has bringing their own security platform? So we're always looking quite rightly at where stuff is, how is it protected, and how do users want to access that environment? And hence that slide that Andy had in terms of the edge, the cloud, and the endpoints. And the constant discussions that we have are scoping an appliance these days is pretty straightforward. FortiGates are built, as I said, on steroids to punch a lot of traffic through these appliances. we spend more time understanding how to keep cloud environments secure, and how customers want to control even with endpoint security in the Fortinet side of things with the FortiClient product. That's one bit of the jigsaw. That's the endpoint being secured, but the content that you're going to with your security policy to the cloud, what's going on in the cloud side of things as well. So hence I mentioned the SASE reference, because anybody reading current Gartner reports and content, the world has accepted SD-WAN, and that perhaps these hybrid public-private with SD-WAN overlaid is bloody fantastic technology. But let's now just everybody working on devices that just go straight to the cloud, whatever the customer's interpretation of that is. And if we are into multi-home applications in, I don't know, let's say Google and Azure as examples, how about having some technology that ensures that we get to the most highly available application host, because we want to be even more creative with how we're traversing the public internet. So we're sort of touching the surface tonight with what SD-WAN with managed security overlaid is capable of. There's a much broader discussion point.
Okay, thank you.
Fantastic. Any other questions, David?
So, yeah, I don't think I'd appreciated that there might be a difference between SDN and SD-WAN from the early days of this. So, do you see that as a massive distinction? It sounds like what you described sounds more like a VPN-related offering than an SDN-related offering, or am I trying to read too much in?
No, I think where we've seen, our network, our core network is SDN enabled, and that means that on our customer-facing portal, customers are allowed to, or customers can make changes to their services by defining the parameters of change through software. So there's a little slider on their bandwidth for their circuit, and they can slide slide the slider up, and that gives themselves more bandwidth. And that software-enabled change is then defines the configuration of the circuit right down to their router. So that's software-defined networking being carriers and service providers allowing end users to define their own services using software, as distinct from software-defined wide area networking, which, as you say, is much more of a commonly seen as an alternative to MPLS, in that it's an IPsec method of connecting lots of buildings and sites together, but we see it more of benefit to more people having the application awareness thing, rather than you can IPsec a load of sites together, because you don't need SD-WAN for that. You just need better firewalls.
I mean, I'm not trying to do it down, but I'm trying to put it into terms I understand. So it sounds like it's application awareness on top of a traditional IPsec type VPN. Yes. Possibly point to point, but this is what we're talking about with SD-WAN.
That and the central orchestration. So people moved on to MPLS because, yes, they can connect all their sites together using firewalls, but every time they add a new site, they need to update every single other firewall, and it's a pain in the bum. Now we're kind of reaching the end of MPLS, suggesting going back to using firewalls at every site. But the key difference being that you can make a single change to 1,000 devices from the orchestration platform, as distinct from the sort of pre-MPLS IPsec VPNs. But you're right, absolutely. But there's the orchestration part that does differentiate it slightly.
And the other bit, which is my pet hate in all sales pitches where we don't worry about price, that's the last thing we worry about, which is basically suggests that price doesn't matter. And I'm going to imagine to most businesses it does matter. So is there any way that you could at least size this for a small business and medium size as to what kind of
that's easy. I think
it does matter, because you make choices that are based on those entry port ways.
Yes, you do. Ways, I know where John was coming from with that is that once you understand, so for example, once you understand the implications of a customer's key application being offline for a day, or you understand the RPO and RTO of a cyber attack or something, once you understand what job means is that the entry into a conversation with a customer should be much more about landscaping than price, rather than how many sites do you want, that's the price for the box. Because unless you really understand how important applications are, the implications of downtime and so on, then my £30 box, which guarantees much less downtime than somebody else's £25 box, it's not just.
No, I appreciate that.
But yes, we can. But yes, we can.
There is a kind of, am I looking? If I have a single office, am I looking at £1,000 a year, £5,000 a year, £10,000 a year? What? I have no feel whatsoever, given the amount of professional services you're offering, what the cost of this service would actually be.
Yeah, so
I think of it as a service from what you've described. So
what we've done is we've taken a very complicated price book from and put it into very simple terms for Immervox to very easily guide any customer through. Pick an appliance, so start with a 40F up to 2600 or regular. Pick 2 of them if you want high availability. Pick your professional services, so to configure it, a standard plus or secure plus, just a firewall, or would you like a complex build which encompasses more next-gen firewall features and this SD-WAN technology, annual management. So there's those three components: firewall, professional services, annual management. There are lots of add-ons. There's rack mount kit, there's extra cables, supply. All of that is kind of in this nice little catalog. So if you wanted to, Immervox could say, pick what you want, and that's the price. Come and negotiate, because there are deals to be done. But we're more interested in having a broader conversation, which is just out of interest. What is this all about? So how do you consume bandwidth? Is it all internet facing? Do you have other sites? And this usually leads us to that consultative conversation. So if you want to start at price first, customers can. There's no objection to that. It's more when you present us with I'm paying £500,000 a year for a global MPLS network. I'm interested in whether I can save 20%, because apparently this SD-WAN thing, going back to legacy IPsec VPN technology before MPLS came along, but MPLS has some restrictions. So you can quoz traffic, you can put all of your traffic in one bucket, whereas what SD-WAN does is it identifies all those different voice applications within that bucket and it treats them separately. So it's us understanding whether MPLS is or private networking is what you need or desire. And I spend a lot of time talking to customers who say, I've got this MPLS network, it's quite expensive. I don't want to hub everything through a central firewall and a data center. And as soon as Andy and I start talking about clean pipes versus dirty pipes, customers say, yeah, I want that. I want that cloud-based security platform. That sounds wonderful. They're looking at the technology with different eyes. And because we've removed the MPLS words, so what they actually want is what they've got, but for it to be more efficient. Just to go back to the earlier thing as well, to give everybody an example, Andy gave us a case study earlier of a circuit that was split between some internet traffic, i.e. yellow traffic, and some blue traffic going to this SIP exchange UC hosted voice environment. So that's a circuit with 2 VLANs. So what software-defined networking enables Immervox to do is change the values of those VLANs in real time. So if you wanted to dial down the internet VLAN and turn up the UC VLAN or vice versa, that's what software-defined networking does. Immervox might want to software-defined networking add another 8 IP addresses onto one of those VLANs. So maybe open up some network ports on the router if there's a router on the end of the circuit. So this is software-defined networking, is us templating the likes of Immervox being able to change things in real time. That has nothing to do with SD-WAN, but if there was a firewall that was sat, or a FortiGate that was sat on that circuit that's obviously policing the yellow internet, but also now understands that some changes have happened. So I've got less internet to play with because you've just made the UC go faster. So I'm now going to proportionately adjust depending how the SD-WAN has been configured. I know I've got less bandwidth now to prioritize for Google or AWS or whatever it is. Or maybe I want to change my SD-WAN settings because my bandwidth VLANs have now changed. So the two kind of work together, but they're separate networking technologies. And just to recap as well, it's perfectly possible with Immervox for Virtual1 to provide an internet-facing circuit and add SD-WAN to it for a single site customer and maybe private VLANs. And if you are a customer who has 2 or more sites and you want to securely connect them together, then we would build a good old-fashioned IPsec VPN tunnel between 2 FortiGates, and optional whether you want to enable the application-aware traffic steering over that VPN, over that encrypted tunnel, because as long as the FortiGates are the appliances creating the encryption, they can obviously identify the application traffic that's flowing over that tunnel.
Fantastic. Right, that is an absolutely fantastic answer, John. I'm going to cut off all questions now because otherwise we're going to be here all night. I do think this highlights the point. This is the first in a series of these talks, and for me, as ironic as it might sound at this point in the evening, the idea is to simplify the conversation and really start to get into the user's ears. And I do think, we sit through hours of cybersecurity talks. That's the point. Like, what are the real world applications? So I still think we've, simplifying that message for the ears of the consumer, because I agree with you. I don't think price does matter, because at some point they're going to have to get insured for there's lots more other elements that's going to, they're at risk of losing more money in another way. So there's definitely a cost analysis for the client. And this is all what we need to do and simplify for them. So thank you very much to Andrew. Thank you to John, both from Virtual1. Thank you to John, who is here from Immervox. There are more of these talks coming. As I said, this was a bit of a trial tonight, so we'll see what the next one looks like, and we will be in touch. So thank you so much for coming to the ISTN talk this evening. We will be in touch with you soon. Thank you very much. Thanks very much.
Have a great evening.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time.